Hey guys, Toolman Tim here. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. It's January 8th, 2022, and this is episode 54 of the Workshop Podcast. Today we're going to talk about the lessons that I learned while prepping to fly, items that will make it a much or slightly smoother process, and the single recommendation I was given that made the trip so much better was to remember to be patient. So, first off, to let you know, I'm not an expert at flying. I've probably flown, maybe made 12 or 15 connecting flights in my lifetime. So I have a little experience, but not a ton. It'd been almost 5 years since I'd flown before. As you guys kind of follow me and know, I had to go back east for my dad. He was having surgery just before Christmas, and it was a good excuse to go back to the hometown and visit people. I had 10 days of uninterrupted time with the family, and it was wonderful. And I got to tell you, not to scare you right off, but every single time I've ever flown has been nice and smooth with just maybe a little bit of turbulence. But when we left Edmonton, it was minus 30 something Celsius. We landed in Toronto, it was plus 18 Celsius, which anyway, that's huge. We'll do the math later on. But coming into Toronto, we were warned ahead of time there might be a bit of turbulence, but there was about an 80 to 100 km/h crosswind. So as we come in, all three of us, me and the two girls, I'll be honest, we were just a little nervous. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't fun. And it was like when you're on the top of a kind of a roller coaster and you're going up and down, up and down. The bottom's dropping out from you. And then as they're coming down and trying to land, the crosswind is blowing. It was a miserable landing. But other than that, the other three flights went off without a hitch, other than a couple of delays, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, before I started, back a couple of weeks before I flew, I put it out on social and I said, hey guys, what do I need to take with me as a prepper to be prepared as best I can, following the rules of flying, of course, when traveling? And so you guys sent me a lot of information. I was pretty excited about that. So this is what I settled on. And if you're wondering why I'm filming this down in my office, again, these weekend episodes, a lot of them are going to be in the office at this point. But right now, again, it's like minus 30 out in the workshop, and it's too much work to get everything warmed up with the furnace. So here we are down here. So I'm going to try to do this as an audio and a video. So I'm going to show you the items and talk about them too. So if you're on the audio only, you're not missing out on anything. But this was the bag I decided as my carry-on. I wanted kind of a purse style over the shoulder bag that would stash under the seat. Even though they tell you not to grab and go in an emergency, I want to be able to take that with me. And then, of course, we each had rolling suitcases, the small ones that fit in the overhead bins, and those were great as well. But first off, I want to tell you what I ended up taking. We'll go over the list real quick, and then I'm going to share with you a whole bunch of tips. And to be honest, one of my bigger tips is if you don't have to fly in 2022, don't. It can be a painful process. I mean, I love the fact that it saved me 5 days of driving. So if you have to, do it. But if you don't, it's just not that of an enjoyable process anymore. And it's unfortunate because back in the day, I think it was pretty good. But between the cramped seats, having to, have your face covered, uh, just, no real meal at all. Everything about it is just, it's not very enjoyable at this point. It's something you get through. So let's talk about what I took with me. And this was for the whole trip too. So some of these things came in handy a lot more on the other end. First off, I started with two 20,000 milliamp Anker battery packs. These guys are great. Use them everywhere. One thing I'll talk about a little bit later is use them as your charger. So as you're going along, use them. And then when you find time, we'll talk about it a little later, get them charged up again. Bring as many phone wires as you possibly can. I brought two iPhone chargers with me, and each of my girls had a couple because you never know if you're going to lose one, you're going to break one, whatever. And of course, everything that I have in this bag is stuff I carried onto the plane with me because this is the type of stuff that if the damn airline ends up losing your luggage, you want to have some bare necessities with you. Prescriptions, always have some of those. I took, I think about a 2 to 3 week supply of each, had them in there. I wanted a good flashlight, so I took my Coast brand headlamp. I didn't use it, but just because you don't use something doesn't mean you weren't prepared for something. I mean, an unexpected power outage on the plane would be a bad situation, but just having backup light that's better than the little LED on my phone was, for me, a good idea. AirPods. So I wanted something to be able to listen to podcasts, that kind of stuff, drown out some of the noise. These were okay about that. We'll talk about that down the road. Gum, you guys probably know, but it helps with the ear popping. I've gotten better with that over the years, but my two daughters, Alice, kind of struggles with that a bit. I took my wallet with me. I wanted that on hand. Sunglasses, I took them all the way to Nova Scotia with me and then set on them in the seat the first time I got into the rental car. So I had no sunglasses. Everybody forgets to take sunglasses with you when you travel. Whether it's winter, summer, doesn't matter. Have sunglasses. I should have taken 2 pairs, but whatever. A notebook and pen. I took that with me and ended up not using it. I wanted to have somewhere to write notes and that kind of stuff, but I don't know, the airplane situation isn't real conducive to pen and paper. So I just used my phone a bit. I probably wouldn't take, paper with me next time, but I might take a pen at least because there's always use for that. Now, this is one, I'll talk about this a little later, but I took a multi-tool with me. I took my DeWalt one. And you might say, Tim, you can't take that. We'll discuss that in a little bit. It was, anyway, it's kind of cool, something I learned. Entertainment, when you got to have something to keep your mind going. I had podcasts and different things on my phone, but you know what I didn't do? I didn't download enough of them, and I really didn't want to pay for the Wi-Fi on the plane. They do have built-in entertainment you can watch. It's like 3 or 4 episodes of a bunch of shows, but something, and you guys might think I'm a big geek for this, but this is a Nintendo Switch. It's portable, and I downloaded the entire catalog of Super Nintendo games on it, and I played Zelda and Mario Kart, anything to keep my mind occupied while I was flying, anything you can do to speed up the process. Sleeping's fine, but if you're not a big gorilla of a man like me, you might have an easier time sleeping in the seats. From there, toothbrush, floss, those are important because if you end up landing somewhere that you don't have your stuff with you, you're going to pay an arm and a leg for any of that stuff. And that's going to be a theme in this episode. Anything you buy in the airport is going to cost you. Now, this is one of my tricks. I love cough drops. First off, if you're wearing a mask, it dries your throat out. And you got to wear it everywhere in the airport, on the plane, everything. So it dries your throat out. So I pop cough drops in behind the mask and suck on them for a while. And it just helps moisten up your mouth. And I also find they help keep me awake as well, especially the white ones, the menthol ones. They work really, really good. Keep some extra surgical masks because in the airports, it seems that they really want the blue and white surgical masks. I like the pullover cloth mask, but that's a no-go in most airports. Tylenol, because I tend to get dehydrated and the air's dry and I get headaches sometimes, so take some of those. Paperwork. Enough said. You guys can understand in this day and age, if we're traveling, you got to have paperwork, and that's another whole story we're not going to talk about today. For me, passports. You can have just a picture ID, but when you have a passport going through airport security or going through, like when you're checking into the actual airplane, all of that stuff, to me, they just look at a passport, go ahead, have a great day. So anything you can do to help get less scrutiny on yourself and have to go through, like, say, an extra check down, or they want to scrutinize your ID a little more, then, whatever you can do, do it. And passports are good for that. So that was really all I took. I'm going to talk about some of the different tips I learned. And honestly, most of these tips came from you guys. And I tried to do the best I could to learn from it. And I wrote down every time I thought, oh, this thing's a pain in the ass. Why didn't I do this? Or why didn't I bring this? Or why didn't blah, 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 right? Every time I thought that during the whole trip, I wrote it down in my notepad so that everything would be fresh, because this is like 3 weeks after my plane trip and I never would have remembered all this. So I wanted to make sure every lesson I learned I could share with you guys. So first off, cash on hand. This is a big one. I had some cash in my wallet because who knows? What ended up happening is when I got out east, they ended up shutting off one of my credit cards because it had what they called weird, unknown transactions and that sort of thing. So I had to call them to get it reactivated. So cash on hand is huge. I mean, you got to have a credit card if you're going to rent a hotel or a car rental at this point. So I hate to recommend having more credit than you need, but a couple of credit cards is pretty handy, especially when one won't work, because multiple times on the trip out east, one card wouldn't work and I'd have to call them, or another one wouldn't. And it all seemed to depend on what kind of machine you're in or what kind of store you're in. So multiple credit cards was a hack for me, just so that I'd have them. Now, as far as, I don't know if I can find it in here, guys, but the DeWalt multi-tool. So first off, this only really pertains to Canada in a way. So they're back in 2017, apparently, because I'm, if you can see right now, of course, I'm wearing my neck knife, and I hate to be without a knife. That's why I have my neck knife. And of course, on a plane, you can't carry a neck knife. That's a no-go. However, in Canada, as of 2017, you can carry a multi-tool with a blade less than 6 centimeters, which is about 2 1/3 inches. Now, when I went through security, of course, they flagged it for extra scrutiny, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. And I just had to go up to the window, and he said, could you please open it up and show me the longest accessory that has a sharp edge on it? So they basically wanted to see the longest blade. So I opened it up and I showed him, and he's like, oh, no, that'll be fine. There was one other piece in here he was curious about, but it ended up being the locking mechanism that isn't removable, because that would have exceeded the length. But in Canada, that is an option. If you want a multi-tool, Gerber and a few other ones make security passable multi-tools, things that you can carry on a plane in the US. Look into them. I'm not saying that some security guards aren't going to flag it and take it away from you. That's why I took my DeWalt, because this thing was like $25, and if I lost it, I'd have had a good story to tell you. But I was able to get through security with it both ways, so I had a knife or a blade with me for utility purposes if I ever needed it. So I enjoyed that. Now, something else with the battery packs, when you want power banks and you're traveling, use USB-C. I found, there's a lot of things on the go with that, but basically my plan was, because I was kind of surprised, there wasn't nearly as many USB and AC adapter plugins available in airports and on airplanes than I thought. Now, some of them I had to dig to find, but so basically when I was traveling, I had no interest in going and sitting by a pole and plugging something in. I wanted to make sure I could just use my battery banks. And that's what we did. My daughters and I used the 2 battery banks as our phone power. We'd use it as much as we needed for as long as we needed. And then when we finally got access to a convenient outlet, then we would charge it as fast as we possibly could. So the best way to do that, and of course, when you're charging this kind of stuff, remember, it bottlenecks. So if you have a USB-C cord, but you have a really slow AC adapter, that's going to bottleneck. If you have a battery bank that isn't rated for the full, say, 18-watt charging capability, no matter how fast you're trying to put power into it, it will only sip the power. So make sure that your AC adapter, your cable, and your battery bank are all rated for, kind of 18 to 20 watts at least is really good, and they will charge fast. My 20,000 milliamp battery packs will charge in 4 hours from stone dead. So that's something to consider. Remember, so basically use your battery banks as an outlet so that you don't have to go looking for outlets. And then when you have downtime and you have easy access to that outlet, then just fill the power as quick as you can. Another thing, so if I got separated from my carry-on luggage, I wanted something with me. So I took a couple $100 in, smallish bills, and I put them under the insole in my shoe and carried it that way. I need to figure out a way. Our bills are plastic up here, so they slide around, and my sole kind of went all over the place, especially when you're walking really fast. But it was nice to know that no matter where I went, worst case scenario, I had a couple $100 on me that I could use. Cash is always a prepper's friend, especially if you're in a bad situation, or say somebody stole my carry-on bag or stole my wallet, or I lost it, or whatever. Okay. Now, going through security, and a lot of you guys might know this, but if you don't, somebody's watching this saying, oh, okay, whatever. You can take, for the most part, you can take homemade food and prepackaged food through security. No worries, but no fluids, basically. So get yourself either an empty water bottle, something I looked into too late and I didn't get it ordered in time before the flight, or once you get through security, buy yourself the biggest water bottle you can find for the cheapest price. The cheapest price is going to be the hardest part. And then just refill it, because there are fountains, water bottle fountains everywhere in the airports. And that is great, because something that I discovered really quick is food isn't always available on the other side of security. And if it is, you're going to pay through the nose for it. There was a little cup. It had about 6 pieces of cheese, and I mean little blocks, squares of cheese, about a 1-inch square. It had a couple of grapes, maybe 4 grapes, and 3 little 2-inch long sticks of pepperoni in a little cup, and it was $10. And by the time we ended up having a delayed flight, and by the time we got into Toronto, most of the good places were closed, and the ones that were still open, the food had been so picked over, we were in rough shape. So do yourself a favor, go to the dollar store, go to a grocery store, and buy yourself some high protein snacks, whether it's pepperoni sticks or trail mix, or even peanut M&M. Something with a little bit of sweetness is nice on a flight as well. And fill your bags with those, because we ended up eating junk in the inside of the airport that was just miserable. And you'd always have to rush. It's nice to have it, because there was one time that we thought we weren't going to make our connecting flight. So make sure you have snacks with you, and have a container to refill with water, because you're going to pay through the roof for it. Entertainment, like I said, I need to have something to keep my mind occupied, because I don't love flying. I'm not nervous about it per se, but I just want to get it over with. So the best way I found was to listen to a podcast and play the video games on my Nintendo Switch. But whatever it takes to keep your brain going, it's kind of like a time machine. You speed your brain up and whatever. Another thing that I wish I had done, I had seen this on a bunch of different airplane hack videos. Mark your damn checked luggage. Anything that you send through, no matter how weird of a color it is, there's a good chance someone else has a piece of luggage the same color or similar to yours. But of course, black is so common. So find a way to mark it with a flag or decorative tape or something around the handle, because when you're waiting around the luggage carousel at 3 o'clock in the morning, the last thing you want to do is guess what kind of luggage that is, or if it's yours, or you got to flip up and then somebody gets ugly at you because you touched their luggage, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, something else I used, I forgot to bring it down to show you, but I picked up an Apple tracker a while ago, an air track, whatever they call that thing. And it's just it's about the size of a loonie or a toonie up here, which is a $1 or $2 coin. And I threw it in my checked luggage. I checked ahead of time, and it's totally okay. Those little CoinCell 2032 batteries are totally fine with FAA and Canadian airline regulations. And it doesn't give you real-time updates, but what it does do is it tells you that when you land, your luggage. So when I landed in Halifax, I knew my luggage was in Halifax, at least one piece of it anyway. But I figured if one's with it, they were probably all with it. So that gave me a little bit of peace of mind. I really enjoyed that. I'm going to play with that down the road and make some videos on it, but they keep kind of neutering the functionality a little bit more and more, because they're scared about stalking and stuff. So I'm going to do some testing. We'll see where we end up. Another thing I didn't do enough of, I didn't download near enough podcasts or audiobooks. I thought I did. I figured, I'll have time, and I never, ever thought to do it. I should have downloaded, excuse me, guys. I don't know. I had 6 hours of flights each way. I should have had probably 20 hours of podcast downloaded, and I maybe had 3 to 4 hours, and I accidentally deleted one, my dumbass. I don't know what I was doing. So make sure you have way more audio content for listening to than you need, at least if you're in that kind of mindset, because that helps me pass the time. Something else that I found after about halfway through my trip was that USB ports are hidden everywhere. They're not obvious. It used to be, it seemed like if you found an outlet in an airport, you knew right where it was. But the USB ports are so skinny and so thin, they've just installed them wherever they can find them. And in all the airports I was in, they were kind of down under the armrest, so you couldn't even see them. You basically had to get down on the ground to see them. And then on the airplane itself, the seats are so close to you that by the time you come down below your tray, that's where they have the USB ports hidden. I went through the entire first flight before I found a USB port. And for a guy my size, it's hard to even get the cable plugged in there, because it's down underneath. And anyway, but it is what it is. From there, another item that was recommended to me was noise canceling headphones. And you know what? I didn't follow it. I thought the earpods, the Apple AirPods, will be sufficient enough. And you know what? For whatever reason, this time around, the noise in the airplane seemed louder than any other time I remember it. I had them turned up all the way, and that background rumble of the airplane was still almost enough to block out half of what I was listening to. So the next time I fly, I am going to have some sort of noise canceling headphones. I really don't want to have to carry the big over the ear style. So if anybody has a recommendation for an earbud styling noise canceling, I would love that. If you're going to fly, download the app for your airline. It's great. I used WestJet. I was able to check in, pay for my checked bags. I was able to print boarding passes. I was able to email boarding passes. The whole works. get one of those. They're easy. That's also what I had to use to get their quote unquote free entertainment online while flying as well. Now, boarding passes, email them, take screenshots, print them out. Anything and everything you absolutely can do it. Because, you know, if you get up to the wicket and all of a sudden your email's not working, well, you have still pictures you took of them. And if your phone died, have the paper ones in your carry-on bag. To me, that was because, again, the last thing we want to do is get up to the gate and not be able to get on to fly, right? So all of that. Something else I found out was, of course, we wanted to have as much with us as we could. So we had these fairly rolling, you know, fairly decent sized rolling bags that we could check, or that we could carry on, sorry, and put in the overhead compartment. But on the first flight heading out, they asked for volunteers that would allow them to check our bags for free. So sometimes if your flight is a little bit overbooked, you can check it. And you know what? That was huge to us, because then we didn't have to wheel those bags between flight. Of course, we had less with us, but that made me extra glad that I had my carry-on shoulder bag, because that had the bare essentials in it. Something else I think I forgot to mention was I had a pair of underwear and a pair of socks in my carry-on bag as well. But yeah, so to me, that was great. We also had one time where we had a flight delayed by an hour and 20 minutes, and we had like an hour and 15-minute layover at the next stop. So we were panicked, and by the time we got there, half the flight runs off and starts running to the other gate, and then all of a sudden, boom, that flight was delayed as well. We had a 3-hour delay, roughly, I think, in Toronto heading to Halifax the first time. I just threw my bag on the floor, laid up against a wall, and I went to sleep for an hour. Helped me a lot. Another tip for me, drink lots of fluids, because you're going to get dry on the airplane, but use the bathroom in between flights. At least that's what I found was the best way. Of course, I did use the ones on the airplane as well, but if you're 6'2" like I am and a broad-shouldered dude, that is just not a fun concept or experience. So yeah, do all you can to empty your bladder before you get on the plane. You'll feel better for it. And then, like I said, the number one tip that I was given, the number one single item that I should have had or, you know, packed. So I asked out on social, and everybody gave me all kinds of great ideas, and I was super happy with that. But the one, and I got to give him props, I got to shout him out here, is Jason Zoller on Instagram. He told me, I should have brought the whole quote over, but he works in the airline industry somehow, or at least adjacent to it or something. And he said the single biggest thing you can carry with you is an attitude of patience. And I got to tell you, when he first sent that to me, I kind of rolled my eyes. I thought, oh, yeah, that's cheesy. But, you know, as we were getting ready to fly, I kept looking at my girls and I said, okay, the key to traveling properly is to have patience. And you know what? It worked. And I know whatever, esoteric, blah, blah, blah. But as we were flying, you know, in between, and when things would get a little bit nasty, you know, you'd be like, oh, I'm getting so tired, or I'm whatever. I would look at my girls and I'd say, all right, girls, what is the theme of this flight? And they'd say, patience, Dad. And, you know, it kept me, because sometimes when I get a little tired, I can get a little grumpy, and, you know, you don't always want to mistreat people, but sometimes you're like, why is this person being so stupid? But I got to thank Jason, because he seriously told me the most important thing to pack on a flight in this day and age is patience, because there's a lot of idiots out there. And if you lose your shit with them, well, there's a good chance you might not get to fly or whatever. But patience was the single best tip I got, and the single best tip that I can pass on to anyone else. So guys, I hope you enjoyed my look at our incredible flight across country. I loved being there. I loved getting home. I didn't particularly care for the time in the airport or on the plane, but it still beat driving across country 5 days each way in the wintertime. If you guys have any tips that I missed, send them to me. You can put them in the comments here. You can email me at therealtimcook@gmail.com, or yeah, just add me on social. Hit me up there. You want to know more about who I am? Most of you know, but toolmantim.co, that's the easiest place to find me. And if you're listening to this, you know, within a few days of release, next Tuesday, if I get the date right here for you guys, just a second, next Tuesday, 11 o'clock, next Tuesday, January 11th, 2022 at 6 p.m. at 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. will be the inaugural first episode of the Fireside Freedom podcast. I am so excited about that. It's a roundtable, freedom-centered discussion with positive attitudes and incredible creators. 8 of us will be doing, switching up 4 each week or whatever. And we're going to talk about different topics in the preparedness and freedom mindset. So check that out, guys. I'll have a link in the show notes today to the YouTube channel, and the podcast feed will be live as soon as the first episode comes up. So guys, anyway, that's it for me this week. As you know, I always appreciate you coming and hanging out with me in the workshop, because you could spend your time absolutely anywhere. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.